50 states. I mean, you're going to get moved from state to state. Chances are you're going to use U-Haul or a company like it to pack up all your things and move to another state. And they put out a report every year ranking all 50 states. The ones at the top are experiencing the most growth. It goes all the way down to 50, which are the states that are experiencing the most population loss. And so I started studying these numbers. What I found very interesting is that the 3 out of the top 5 states experiencing the most population growth all have a 0% income tax rate. And they're all benefiting from that. You know, Florida, people would say, you know, anytime you mention Florida, people will say tourism, things like that, and that's a valid point. You know, the other 8 states, you know, it's not the case. So there's a different recipe that fits for each state. But Florida, by having a 0% income tax and the growth that they've seen, they actually have so much of a surplus that now they are phasing out property tax as well. Which you would think the opposite. You would think cutting revenue from one area would mean an increase in revenue. But because the abundance of growth and people coming to that state that's shown, it's actually had the opposite effect. So I think I kind of laid out a few different options. Hopefully I didn't give away too much that I wasn't supposed to, but does that kind of give you an idea of like some of the different tracks to get there? No, this is the governor's pledge to get rid of personal property tax. And he's working with the legislature to do that right now. It was announced last year. So if you, after this, Google Ron DeSantos and property tax, and you'll find probably a dozen articles that come up on it.
So we haven't done it yet?
I don't believe they got it done in the last legislative session.
So we don't have data on if it worked?
Well, I know they have the surplus to do it. It's just a matter of getting the legislatures to vote and approve it.
What I understand from Missouri, two-thirds of our general revenue is income tax, is what I think. Is that correct?
I believe it's about that's what I was thinking about. I think it's a little bit more than a third, but it's a significant portion. But it's something that all these other states have to overcome as well.
We don't have a natural resource like oil.
True, like Texas.
We don't have Oklahoma, gas.
In Oklahoma, it's one of the race
Alaska.
education. So how does this impact our education?
Well, it shouldn't. If it's revenue neutral, it wouldn't impact education at all. And I know that's the goal. That's the goal, the stated goal of the plan the governor's going to put forward. Yes, sir.
You're talking about how things affect the communities. Education should be number one. How are we going to get public education funded when $51 million has been set aside for vouchers? All these tax cuts you're talking about.
A $300 million shortfall.
And all these shortfalls we have, the first thing that when we have revenues that are short, education gets cut first. They get withheld.
Oh, yeah,
I've been doing this for over 50 years. And we have to have a solid public education system. Otherwise, what are we working for? Our kids have to have a future.
I agree with that statement 100%. Our kids have to have a future. I think that I was raised. I went to public school, attended public school. My children also attend public school, and for us, that's a great fit. I think in other cases that might not be the case. So I think having the flexibility. So it's not taking 50 out of education.
It's out of general revenue.
Well, but it wasn't taken out of education budget. I mean, the Senate Appropriations share is very consistent.
If you shorted $51 million, then what happens to the education budget? Because it's already short, isn't it?
Well, the $50 million with the voucher program, but that didn't reduce the overall education budget. So that was put there, but that wasn't subtracted from the education budget.
So what happens if general revenue is short? What happens to the education fund? Is it nothing? It doesn't get touched.
Well, I'll tell you, the pet projects gotta go first and foremost. But yeah, I mean, there's so much bloat, so much waste in our budget, billions upon billions of dollars. Education would not be the first thing to cut.
But it could be cut if the money does not come in.
I mean, it got to a point where it was drastic to where everything was cut. But from conversations with the governor, public statements that he made, I don't see that happening. And like I said, with the plan that's phased in with income tax, we have to see the growth, we have to see the revenue before anything is cut. So you would see an increase in revenue before you would see, any potential losses there. Does that make sense? We have more revenue. When there's revenue triggers, we have to have so much in a reserve fund to backfill any holes before any incremental decreases in the income tax rate could be cut. Then that's the safety net right there. Yes, ma'am.
What are some examples of pet projects? It seems to me that vouchers
Is a
fit
pet
into that category.
Well, I'm talking more about things specifically for people's budget, or maybe not their budget, for their district. And I'm hesitant to go into details because I could be tracked out, and I don't want, I don't want this to be me calling out specific senators for, getting, $100 million sent for different things in their budget. But, everything from like parks, no, I would say that's a pet project. That was certainly a project before my time in the legislature, but things that would benefit just their districts that don't benefit the state. But I don't want to go into a line item breakdown of what we had, for instance, in the last budget, where people could go and track that down. The next thing, I had my colleagues saying, "Oh, I was at this town hall and Senator Ben Brown was blaming your projects for the reason that the budget gets increased by $3-4 billion every time it comes over the Senate." So things that could be like a park named after a relative you had, or things of that nature. I'm trying to.
It costs billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Change your
When you have 34 senators that are asking for things, I'll tell you, the only ask that I've made of the budget, it was for about $500,000, I believe it was, for a school district. So it was Baton School District, and they were put in a very difficult position because of a mistake that the state made under our previous state auditor. And because of that mistake, they ended up engaged in a lawsuit, which actually what they had to pay out was insignificant. 90% of the money that the district had to spend was for her attorney fees, unfortunately. And I felt, this was obvious. I even had a letter signed by the current state auditor that certified everything, that went through everything and said, yeah, exactly how I described it was right. Was actually able to get that added to the budget, and then got vetoed, line item vetoed by our previous governor, unfortunately. I believe that's the only ask I've made of the budget. It's got to be something that's essential to a community. And for a small community, the school district, like that is the lifeblood of some small communities. And so I was going to do everything I could to try to set things right. And I felt the state had a responsibility to step in and address that. Thought we had it resolved. Unfortunately, the governor has the ability to go in and line out and veto anything. Just to be clear, it's not the current governor, it was the previous governor. Never got an explanation for the reason behind that. I tried. But things like that are the things that if I'm going to try to get something added into the budget, it's going to be for something like that, where the state has responsibility and the state caused the problem. I feel like, and especially in a small community, I believe that it's only right that the state takes steps to make that right. Did you have an additional question?
I do.
Yeah.
I first wanted to say thank you for not being on social media and being gross. I'm not kidding. You seriously, if you follow a lot of our state representatives, I read the most